I had a really laughable situation with the Messiah, because we've been rehearsing that at rehearsal, and I was doing okay.
Yeah.
And then I thought, but I really needed to practice it. So I went upstairs here and got on the piano. And so I'm playing the notes on the piano, and I couldn't hit any of those notes. They were way too high for me. And I thought, what the heck? I thought I was singing this in rehearsal, but I can't possibly get up that high. So I finally dropped out of the Messiah because I just told Edie that I just couldn't sing those high notes. And then I discovered, I don't know how I discovered, somebody told me that there's a little number 8 at the bottom of the treble clef in the treble in the tenor line, and it means that you sing an octave lower than the note appears on the
Welcome to The Choir Baton, a podcast designed to engage with people and stories, ideas, and inspirations stemming from choir. No other art form, no sport, no hobby, no business requires a group of people to execute a communal goal with just their voices. Join me, your host, Beth Philemon, as I interview guests who are singers, teacher conductors, instrumentalists, and community members. Together, we'll ask questions, seek understanding, and share insight from our experiences in life and in choir. Choir Baton listeners, I am so excited for you to listen to this episode of the Choir Baton podcast. My interview with Stan and Dawn Sutherland was actually recorded a year ago, if you can believe it or not. I was sitting in their living room in Flagstaff, Arizona. Lies. It was not recorded a year ago. It was recorded 6 months ago when I was sitting in their living room in Flagstaff in December. I got my times confused, but if you have followed me on my personal Instagram, you know that in May of 2019, I took a 12-day trip down the Colorado River with a group of women. It was an amazing trip. Highly recommend it. Side note. But the woman that organized that trip was Dawn, and I met Dawn when I was living in Flagstaff, attending Northern Arizona University for graduate school for my master's in choral conducting. While I was in Flagstaff, I was an assistant director of the Flagstaff Master Chorale, and Dawn was a member of that ensemble. In fact, her husband, Stan, auditioned for the Master Chorale, and I was actually in the room with him when he auditioned. I feel so fortunate to have met Dawn and Stan. They have continued to be amazing, dear friends of mine, and I'm grateful for Dawn coordinating that trip. It was life-changing. Highly recommend it, and it's also a testament to the amazing people that you can meet in choir that can then lead you to even amazing opportunities as well. I love their story because they both have a lifelong appreciation for music, but neither of them are what you might consider professional musicians. My time in Flagstaff with the Master Chorale was unbelievably influential and at a core of what I hope Choir Baton continues to only be a resource for, and that is a place for people interested in learning more about choir that aren't choir teacher, director, conductors to come to as well. And with that, I am launching a singer course for anyone interested in learning more about choir and how to read choral music in the future. In fact, we know that while we might think that singing in choir is easy, it's actually quite specialized. And there's nothing quite like this out there on the market that helps bridge the gap for people that are interested in choir but have never sung in it before, or it's been years since they've sung and they need to brush up on things, or they're currently in a choir and have a lot of questions. There's nothing out there quite like this for them. So that's why I'm excited to share with you that Choir Baton is launching a course for singers in July. But first, listen to this interview with Dawn and Stan. And here's why you have to listen to it. One, they are just amazing, awesome people. Dawn was a teacher for a bit and is now, I'm not even sure if we mentioned this in the episode, but we'll joke, she's Stan's sugar mama because she is a prolific painter of Western landscapes, particularly within the Grand Canyon, Sedona area. Her work is amazing and featured all over and resides in houses of people across the United States. Stan is a retired corporate attorney and yet also continues to be a philanthropist and activist and participant in not just Master Chorale, but also on the symphony as a board member and on different sorts of theater, troops, and activities that they have within the city of Flagstaff. I love their story and passion for choral music because ultimately this couple is what we aspire to do as choir teachers. And if you were listening to this as a choir singer, this is probably a lot of your story as well. I think it's unbelievably important for us to hear what resonates with people about choir that empowers them to continue singing for their entire lives, or if they're like Stan, brings them to join choir for the first time later in their life. This is an episode that you can learn an immense amount in regards to the importance of choir and the importance of never assuming that our singers know certain things as well. For more information on Dawn's amazing artwork, I will link her website in the show notes below. And for more information on the Choir Baton Singer course, be sure to check out the Choir Baton website or check out the link in our bio below as well. If you know someone that this is just what they've been looking for, please pass the information along to them as well. And now, without further ado, my interview with dear friends and fellow singers, Dawn and Stan Sutherland. Well, welcome, Choir Baton, to another episode of the podcast. I am elated to have two very special guests with me for today's podcast episode. Please welcome dear friends of mine, Dawn and Stan Sutherland. Welcome, Sutherlands.
Hi.
Hi.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
So I was sharing with them when I was brainstorming the podcast that I wanted to think of different people that have been integrated within choral music in different ways, and they were one of the first people I thought of, first guests I knew I wanted on here. I think I even emailed you about it.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so we have been saying that we're going to do this for quite a while, and could have done it over Skype or Zoom, but I feel like in person is so much better.
is great.
Yes. So we are in Flagstaff, Arizona, sitting in their living room, and I'm excited to share with you a bit about who they are and their integration with choir.
Great.
So let's go ahead and start, and just tell us a little bit about, Dawn, I know you're from Wisconsin, and singing has kind of been a part of your life. Tell us a little bit about that.
Probably going way back to when I was a young person in church, a rather musically oriented church, singing in church choir. My cousins and I had a trio that we would sing in Sunday morning service. So music was always a part of the picture. There was always a piano in my house, and I could play piano by ear and taught myself to read music, and then later took piano lessons. When I was in high school, I got into mixed chorus, which was quite a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the top of the line chorus, and had good musical influence there too.
And that was in Wisconsin.
That was in Wisconsin, Oconto, Wisconsin. Yeah, a little bit north of Green Bay. Should I keep?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, music was always sort of part of my life. When I became a freshman in college at UW Green Bay, my rather wheeling-dealing roommate Cindy came back to our apartment one afternoon, and she said, we could get an easy 1-credit A if we just sign up for oratorio chorus and then all we do is rehearse every Monday night with the Green Bay Community Chorus. And so we did that, and it was an easy A. And that's where I really got my feet wet in choral music. Wherever I've lived ever since, I've always tried to find a community chorus to sing with.
Awesome. And I should have prefaced, that's actually how I know Dawn and Stan. I was a graduate assistant at Northern Arizona University for 2 years. And while I was in that position, I was also an assistant director with the Master Chorale of Flagstaff. And I believe it was that, Stan, did you join us that second, 2013 is when you joined,
13,
correct?
yeah.
And so this is actually a great segue to introduce Stan to you all, because I had been with the choir for a year, and Dawn and I had actually gotten to know each other. We were both singing alto. When I wasn't conducting, I was singing, and had an amazing experience we'll talk about later too. But as we entered that second year of mine with the Master Chorale, Dawn had said, "You know what, Stan? I think you would really love to be a part of it, right?" Is that kind of?
I've been trying to encourage him all along, and he just didn't seem to see himself as a choral person.
Yeah.
But then there was an opportunity for him to try out.
Yeah. I distinctly remember, Stan, when you came in for your audition, and I love that you are still singing with the organization today, but you haven't always sung in choirs, right?
No.
Tell us a little bit about your past history with music and just life even.
Well, I started playing the piano when I was 4 years old. My mother got me involved in that, and when I was taking piano lessons when I was 4. So I had a very early exposure to music. And
you probably don't really remember not knowing how to read music.
No, I really don't. I probably was reading, I was reading music before I was reading language.
Right.
You know? So that was pretty early ingrained in me. So I played the piano for several years. Then I got away from it. Then in high school, I played it again for a while, took more lessons, got away from it again. And so on and off over the years. I went through a divorce in 1984, and when I started living by myself, I got a piano again, started playing again. So I found that, very satisfying. So, and then in grade school, I played the clarinet in the grade school band for a few years and really enjoyed that. So I'd had, the only singing I'd done, though, really was in church, or I did get involved in theater in high school and from then on, and I was in a lot of productions, mostly acting, but I did do some singing in like the chorus in plays like HMS Pinafore and Guys and Dolls and things like that.
Wow.
I got involved in the chorus of those. That's about the only singing I'd ever done on stage.
Because you were really involved in theater.
Yeah, since high school. I've always done acting.
Yeah.
And but I just never thought of myself as a singer. And Dawn kept trying to encourage me to get into the chorus, and I said, I'm not a singer. Right?
Yeah.
And so finally one year she just really coaxed me a lot, and I thought, oh, what the heck, because we were living in Flagstaff by then.
Well, and that happened to be a year that they needed tenors.
Really bad, I guess.
Really bad.
And I said, well, we'll find out how badly they need them. So, but, I could read music well enough to audition, and so I got in. But it was a real struggle for me. I didn't expect it to be. I always thought that singing, because it was so easy in church, I always thought that was just easy and not much to it, not.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that happened when I picked up, we were at I think it was the workshop, or the weekend workshop was the first thing I went to.
Right, and it was Brahms' German Requiem.
Yeah, and they passed out all this music, and I'm looking at this music, and I can't figure out where my notes are. I mean, there's 4 bars of music there.
Yeah.
And plus the 2 for the piano. And I had no idea where my notes were on that page. So somebody pointed out the tenor line to me, which is the 3rd one down. But then there's more than one note in there. And I thought, my God, how am I going to tell what? And, of course, it's a lot harder to make your voice hit a note than it is a musical instrument where you just push a key, and it plays the right note. You have to do this with your ear a lot more. So I found it very challenging. And And then singing next to people that were singing a different note than I was, that was very challenging.
Whether it was intentional or not.
That's true. So I found it extremely difficult, actually. But, once I commit to something, I do try to see it through. And we were singing some really nice music. And so I kind of stuck it out. I had a really laughable situation with the Messiah, because we've been rehearsing that at rehearsal, and I was doing okay.
Yeah.
And then I thought, but I really needed to practice it. So I went upstairs here and got on the piano, and so that I could practice my part. And so I'm playing the notes on the piano, and I couldn't hit any of those notes. They were way too high for me. And I thought, what the heck? I thought I was singing this in rehearsal, but I can't possibly get up that high. So I finally dropped out of the Messiah, because I just told Edie that I just couldn't sing those high notes. And, she seemed a little puzzled, but she said, well, okay.
Right.
And then I discovered, I don't know how I discovered, somebody told me that there's a little number 8 at the bottom of the treble clef in the treble in the tenor line. I'd never noticed it. It's very tiny and subtle.
Absolutely.
And it means that you sing an octave lower than the note appears on it.
Yes.
So when I started playing the piano an octave lower, the note was written. All of a sudden I could sing.
Right.
So that was, but I mean, there are a lot of subtleties there that, even if you've done a lot with music before, are different.
I could not agree more, and I think that's such a huge thing to acknowledge and to share, because we oftentimes take so much for granted, not just in choral music, but in other things in life as well. And I love that story, because I guarantee you're not the only person that's had that experience.
I bet not.
Yeah. So you didn't end up singing in the Messiah performance.
No, I dropped out.
Right.
Because I thought, I'm not going to get up there and screech.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, have you sung the Messiah since?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He knows better now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is something that choirs don't always do a great job of doing, is making those connections.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've always loved classical music, and we, what I love about this choir is we do a lot of really great classical music. Gee, we've done so many of the great pieces. We've done Beethoven's Ninth, we've done the German Requiem, we've done the Forays Requiem, Carmina Burana. I mean, every year it was something more special than the year before, and it was so motivating, to actually be able to perform in those things that I'd always just enjoyed listening to. So that was great too.
That's awesome. I love that you both have these histories with music and have really probably found a unique passion together by being able to experience Master Chorale together as a couple singing in this thing. You're both in your own sections and kind of doing your own thing, but it is something really cool that you can do together.
Yeah.
Well, and another great thing about this choir is we get to perform at the symphony.
Right.
And not all choirs get to do that, and that is just really bone-chilling when you're up there with that big symphonic sound and the big chorus. Oh my gosh, the sound is just so moving.
So, Don and Stan, I would love for the listeners to learn about who you are beyond choral music and kind of how you both got to Flagstaff and what you're doing now. Don, do you want to start sharing with the listeners about
Sure. I'll go back, 65 years I was born in a small community in northeastern Wisconsin. Goodness. Early career was in early childhood education. Got a degree from UW Green Bay. Following that, got a master's in counseling. And through a couple of events in my life, divorced one husband and then stumbled onto Stan in the following that. And we met in 86 and got married in 87. So been together ever since.
You didn't mention that you grew up on a farm. I thought that was kind of
Sure. I grew up on a farm. I just figured if you said Oconto, Wisconsin, it's probably a farm community. Not much else there. So a good wholesome childhood, I guess. Had to drive tractor for the hay baler and take care of barn chores. So that was my humble beginning. In 1996, we came out west to visit the Grand Canyon. And,
was that your first time to the Grand Canyon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was. Yep.
So at this point, you guys have been married for 10 years. You were living in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. And visited the Grand Canyon, did a little hiking there, thought that's pretty cool, but never dreamed that we'd be back in this area, actually living just an hour and a half from the Grand Canyon. And at that point in my life, I wasn't painting either. So it was a nice visit, and that was that. But a few years later, we found that we retired and were moving to Arizona. So not to Flagstaff initially. We lived for a brief time in Cottonwood, nearby Cottonwood. But we moved to Flagstaff in 2009 and have been here now 10 years.
Wow.
So
and so Cottonwood is just a little bit north of Phoenix, a little higher elevation, but not quite to what Flagstaff is. And you began to get involved with choirs there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the Cottonwood Chorale and all, but I want to touch on this theme of the Grand Canyon. And if you know anything about me, you know that I recently went on a big river trip for 9 days, I guess.
9 days.
9 days down the Colorado River with a group of women. And Dawn is the reason why I was a part of that trip. She was the mastermind behind pulling together all of these women to go on this trip, planning it. And, you know, I would never have had that opportunity had Dawn and I not met through choir, had Dawn and I not stayed connected through choir. And so much of her love and passion for the canyon came from that initial visit, but also this new creative outlet that you picked up in your life at the age of 47, right?
Yep, 47.
Yeah, so you've got to tell the listeners about this reinvention of yourself.
Sure. There was an opportunity to leave my counseling job. I might call it quitting, or I might call it early retirement. But in 2000, I was finished with counseling in the Wisconsin Technical College system. And at that point, Stan and I were kind of toying with the idea of building a home in the Sedona area. That sort of didn't pan out immediately. So I was just gardening big time in Wisconsin, southeastern Wisconsin. That's what I did. And Stan kept nudging me to take a painting class. I think he'd seen some little sketches or something that I'd done and thought I might have had a little bit of talent. So I resisted for a while, and then finally took a painting class in 2001, January of 2001, and kind of never looked back after that. It's always a rough start when you learn how to paint, but had a good teacher, lots of encouragement, and indeed worked very hard at it. And now, almost 20 years later, here I am painting at the Grand Canyon.
And she's being very modest because Dawn is a very celebrated plein air or painter, and plein air meaning that you paint out
open air,
right?
Yeah.
And you'll have to be watching the blog to see pictures of Dawn and some of the work that she's doing. She also has a newsletter you can sign up for where she details hikes that she's doing and upcoming paintings that she has as well. But it is amazing the work that she does. It is featured in studios across the state of Arizona as well as in the Grand Canyon itself.
Yeah.
And she has established friendships and relationships with people, and it's because of her work, and it's a testament to her passion for this other art form.
I meet a lot of people through painting, and I can be painting on the edge of the Grand Canyon, have a great conversation with someone like our mutual friend Joanne,
right?
And next thing you know, she's on a river trip with us.
Right.
So lots of interesting connections.
It's really it's just fascinating and inspiring. I mean, I've shared with this with you, but I just want to reiterate to our listeners of that we are never at a place where we can't reinvent ourselves, or if there's a passion that we have, to go after it.
Yeah, you're right.
And you do that, and you continue to. I mean, I don't know anything really about painting other than if I like something or I don't like something. But what's cool in the almost 10 years, not quite, but almost 10 years that I've known Dawn, just to see how the intricacies of her painting change as she continues to work and hone her craft, and it's inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
It's so inspiring that I love to joke now that, Stan found himself a sugar mama because she's so successful. And not that
has to pull in a salary around here.
There we go. And not that, Dawn was not successful before in her counseling ventures, but Stan has also had an incredibly successful career as he has journeyed through being a high school teacher to law school and now with the amazing work that he does now. But Stan, will you tell us a little bit about that?
My plan in high school was to become sort of a copy of my mentor, who was a high school English teacher who directed plays and at the high school as well. And so I was going to sort of follow in his footsteps. And then I got into a physics class in high school, which was part of the college prep curriculum. And I was a very good student in high school, but I really had trouble with this physics. And it bugged me because I just thought, this relates to the real world. I really don't want to go through life not understanding this. So I focused on it more and more, and sort of abruptly decided to major in physics in college because it was difficult for me. Sort of a strange decision when I think about it now. But it was probably a life-saving decision, because if I had graduated in 1968 when I did with a degree in English, I would have been immediately sent to Vietnam. But because I was teaching physics, that was a national security priority, and there was a nationwide shortage of physics teachers. And because of Sputnik and all that, science education was a big priority for the country. So I got a 2A deferment, and I never had to go to Vietnam. So thank God for that.
I never knew that.
Yeah, kind of ironic.
Yeah.
So I did that for a few years and a few years more, but then I decided I just didn't like what I saw when I saw teachers who'd been doing it for 20 years. I didn't like their attitudes. I didn't like what it seemed to do to people. And I also got more and more aware of how inadequate the pay was when the garbage truck drivers went on strike and they were making 50% more than I was. So I decided to go to law school, and didn't know what I was going to do when I got out. And so when I graduated, it was a recession in 1975, and so there weren't a lot of law firms hiring. I wasn't so sure I wanted to work in a law firm anyway. It seemed way too stressful. And I ended up getting a job with the Department of the Interior in Washington, D.C., and I just loved that. Washington was an exciting place to be. I was actually out there in the summer of '74 while I was still in law school, working there in the summer, and I was there during the Nixon impeachment hearings. Actually went to one of those hearings. So I was there for some history making, And
what was that like?
It was really something, although it was a little disconcerting because I went on a Saturday morning. They were having a hearing at the Rayburn Building on Saturday morning. It was Sam Ervin and the House Judiciary Committee. And, you couldn't stay in there more than 10 minutes. Most of the seats in the hearing room were for the press, and they had like 20 seats for the public, and they'd let you in for about 10 minutes, and they'd usher you out, and another group would get to come in. So you basically just got to have the experience of being there and seeing this live.
Right.
But that was really kind of interesting. And the other thing that was interesting was the preliminaries, because waiting in line to get in outside the Rayburn Building in the morning, all these members of the committee would arrive, and I got all of them to sign my copy of the Washington Post from that morning. So I still have that newspaper with all those signatures on it from the House Judiciary Committee members. The interesting thing, though, is that some of them, this is when I first hit me that there was a little political theater going on here, too, because one of the members, particularly Barbara Jordan, who was a very well-spoken woman from Texas, arrived in a car, got out, signed an autograph for me, went in the Rayburn building, and 10 minutes later she arrived again and got out and signed autographs and had her picture taken and went in the building, and then 10 minutes later she arrived again. She was just going out the other side and coming around making more entrances, more appearances. So, you know, it was a little disconcerting to realize that this was, you know, history being made, but she was viewing it also as a photo op, you know.
Yeah, the theatrics of it all.
Yeah. So I worked in Washington for a few years, and then I was fortunate enough to get a job with a really fine corporation in Wisconsin, and moved back sort of in my home territory. I was from Chicago originally, northern Illinois, and this job was in southeastern Wisconsin. So I went to work for that company, and it was really nice company to work for, and I stayed there 25 years and retired at the age of 57, which was 2 years after I had planned to retire.
But you loved the job too, right?
I did. I enjoyed the work a lot.
And you were in-house counsel, essentially?
Yeah, and I was deputy general counsel when I retired, and I was doing mostly advertising and regulatory law for them. That was the meaty stuff that I did, aside from the management duties that I had. Okay. And I got to spend some time in the international division too, working with international business. And they kind of, it was a really good company. They rotate you out of your assignment and let you move around the company for a while, just so you got more familiar with other aspects of the business. And I thought that was very helpful to me. It made me a much better counselor later on because I understood a lot more about the business.
Right. Now, I have to also interject this thing that I love about your story, and that is of pancakes. But Don and Stan call each other their second pancakes because both of them have shared.
Okay.
Both of them have shared that they were previously married, and they talk about the power of it. They're clearly just an amazing couple, but the power that they found each other. The first pancake, sometimes
you have to throw out the first pancake. Yeah. And until the griddle is seasoned well, and then the rest of the pancakes turn out.
Yeah, and you guys are the perfect pancake. I love that. So you're in Wisconsin together. You retire, Stan, and at this point you're kind of painting.
Just getting into painting.
Just getting into it. Yeah. You all move out to Arizona.
Yeah.
And now you live in Cottonwood for a little bit, and then move up to to Flagstaff eventually, and you really get integrated within the community here.
Immediately,
right? Yeah. But let's jump back to your course involvement in Cottonwood.
Sure. There was a group called Verde Valley Voices, and they were an earnest group of singers. I've been accustomed to singing with a group that provided a little bit more challenge than that. But until then, I think I helped out one time with a choral clinic at Camp Verde High School. And that's where I saw Dr. Edie Copley conduct. And I thought, I need to find out if I can get into her chorus. Yeah. And so I contacted her, and very shyly, and she said, yeah, sure, come on up and audition. So I thought, wow, that was easy. So I did and got in. So I was delighted. So for probably 4 years, I carpooled with one or two other folks that lived in the Verde Valley, and we drove up north every Tuesday evening. It was a 100-mile round trip to rehearse with the Flagstaff Master Chorale.
And that's
but it was well worth it.
Yeah, that's such a testament to, what we're willing to do as singers to be in a choir that emotionally impacts us. Oh, yeah.
It was a good challenge, great music, and just fun.
Yeah. And a testament, too, to what makes a choir that is going to inspire you to make that commitment? Is
Yes.
the music? Is the fun?
Right.
Is being challenged?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you eventually both move up here, and you have eliminated that long commute. You're still
Right.
singing with the Master Chorale, and you eventually convince Stan to come and join. And what is it about singing in the Master Chorale, more specifically, that you appreciate, that you would want to impart to listeners, whether they're a choir conductor, and to encourage them and say, this is what I value, or someone interested in joining a choir and what it's provided you?
Should I go or shall I?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think for me, it's the magic of picking up a piece of music you've perhaps never done before, chiseling your way through sight reading, learning the notes, and then finding after a number of rehearsals how it just comes together, and you can just hear the real music get started, and just the thrill of putting a piece of music together like that.
Yeah.
So it's also fun to sing one that you've done maybe years before that, dust off your brain cells a little bit and go, oh, yeah, I know this. And then, of course, you don't have to work quite as hard at learning the music, but which is also fun. And just seeing it all come together.
Stan, what about you?
Well, I think it's as I mentioned, I think I've done a lot of acting, and I really enjoy performing. I don't get stage fright, which makes it a lot more enjoyable. And you know, in acting, it's really fun to impart a story, to tell a story that people can relate to and perhaps learn something from. And I think in music, it's kind of similar, right? And I think it's being able to create the sound is sort of like creating a character on the stage. You know, if you can really create the sound that will move people, and it moves you too. And it's just a great feeling to do that. It's a lot of hard work to get there, but that's no different from acting. Acting is an awful lot of hard work to get to the point where you're really doing it well. And choral singing is the same, but it's very satisfying to do it.
It's a very emotional output, you know, from singing Beethoven's Ninth, which I often described as sort of a feat of vocal athleticism, to pieces that are maybe humorous, and then also a piece like Forays Requiem that just about wrings tears out of you.
Yeah.
Just takes you through all kinds of emotional adventures.
I love that you both are able to do it now together.
Well, yeah. If you consider our age, it's pretty good. Because you know the voice doesn't last forever, and this a very sad thing this year where one of the people who's been in the choir a long time, one of the guys that I've sung with, his voice had really gotten pretty gravelly, and they finally told him that he just couldn't continue, and I think it really broke his heart because he loved doing it. But you know, if your voice isn't there, you know, and I think he, you know, understood that, but still, it was sad.
Yeah, and that's a hard balance of.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer, right? I want to say that's so wrong. We shouldn't kick anyone out, but then on a flip side,
if there's a standard of sound that the choir wants to maintain, everybody needs to be in a pretty good vocal form.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is a hard part.
I always struggled with that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it is. It's got to be one of the hardest things about conducting a choir.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about this the other night, Stan, of leadership, of what a choir conductor does, and I mean choir members also as leaders as well. And you had a lot of experience of management in corporate America, and I really loved hearing your insights on how they're kind of integrated and similar in some ways, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
I think it's really about motivating people and helping them do their best.
Yeah.
And you know, you can certainly do that a lot as a choir director, because again, it's just like in acting. The feedback is very important.
Right.
And in acting, if it's a comedy anyway, you get feedback from the audience as well as from whoever's directing the play. But in a choir, you don't really get feedback from the audience. All the feedback comes from the director.
Right.
And it's really important.
Yeah. What are things that you see that you did in corporate management that choir directors do or could do to help drive that motivation?
Well, I think when you have a performance problem of any kind, the way you approach that with the person is very important. And as long as the person knows that you're supportive and trying to be helpful, and not just being critical, most people respond well to that.
Right.
But it's very easy to cross over that line and not even realize that you are, and sound critical, or the person hears that you're critical even if you don't intend it that way. And so I think the supportiveness is really important. And so I think it's just the spirit in which the feedback is offered that makes a big difference. And I've seen lots of differences there just in the few choral conductors I've experienced, because we've had a few candidates come in.
Sure.
And I know there was one fellow who was really, he was quite acerbic with a few of the people, and I thought, ooh, that's not good,
Yeah.
And it's one thing, I suppose, if people have to be in the choir or something, but these are all volunteers. You just don't want to do that. You definitely want to change what they're doing, but there's different ways of approaching that and making it happen. And so I think that skill is an extremely important one. And so I think choral conducting would be good training for management.
Yeah. It's interesting, the Chicago Booth School of Business has actually done some great work with their business students on having them sing in a choir, and also what that is like, about things that you can learn, even teamwork and balance.
Well, there's so much teamwork involved, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And knowing yourself when you are off on a part,
Mm-hmm.
and how do you deal with that when someone beside you is either always on or always off, or between that.
Yeah.
It's a melding of personalities as well as voices. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like paint.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dawn is sitting here on the couch with Stan, and in between her are some really cool programs of past performances you've been on. And I think that's a really cool thing to talk about, where you said the beauty in singing things that you've sung before.
Yeah, Forays Requiem.
Why is that piece so special to you?
I just happened to turn to it too. To me, it's a beautiful piece. It has structure I like, and maybe there's an association with doing it, learning it for the first time, and then repeating it some years later. Might be one good reason.
Yeah.
I don't even remember this, but I see somewhere early on at UW Green Bay, we sang Rutter's Gloria. And years have passed, and then we did it again just a few years ago. Yeah. And I remember going, oh yeah, I know this piece. I've sung this somewhere in my past, but it was a long time ago. So sort of a little musical library built up in my head, and it's just kind of neat to pull out these old programs and go, oh my gosh, I'd forgotten I sang that.
I love that. I love that you have them. I mean, that's such a testament, though, to the importance that choir has in your life. Yeah. So much so that
I throw out an awful lot of other stuff, but these old programs I still have.
Are so meaningful.
Yeah.
And this experience is so meaningful that to you encouraged your husband to join, or I think you might have said the word nag, but
Yeah.
that you are both in it, and you both continue to be huge supporters of the arts, not just in your attendance, but financially as well, which is so important, and even through leadership. Stan, you have served in a formal capacity, you both have led, Stan has served in a formal capacity on various arts organizations, nonprofits around the Flagstaff area. And I'm just curious as to your thoughts of what have you found that is successful, that tips that you might have to someone that is either working in a nonprofit arts setting or considering being a part of that. I mean, you've been a part of the Flagstaff Symphony, several theater companies around town, and those are just the few I know of.
Yeah, I think if you're going to get on a board of directors, it's important to find an organization that you really feel strongly about, that you really want to support because you really love what they're doing.
Right.
I don't think it's good to get into these positions because you want to start telling people how to do it and what to do. It's not a management position in that sense.
Right.
You find something you like and you support it, and you find ways to support it, and I think that's very satisfying because you know you're helping that organization to continue and succeed, and maybe you're not doing anything connected with the actual product that they're producing. You know, maybe you're not singing in the choir or acting in the plays, but you're enabling that organization to produce those things so that other people will have those opportunities. I think that's just as important as having the opportunities yourself, because it's just as enriching for other people as it is for you. Yeah. But if you have management skills or business skills or some other skills that are important to an organization, accounting or whatever it might be, or those organizations need those skills. It's not what their patrons see or patronize, but it's essential to keeping the organization going, and that's equally important to what the products end up being.
Right. And then to flip that, what tips do you have for artistic directors, right? So many times they don't always realize what the board is doing. And what tips would you have for an artistic director in working with a board so that it can be as harmonious as possible?
Well, I think it's like anything else. I think you have to try to understand different points of view and different goals. And I know a lot of artistic folks that I've encountered don't even like to think about the fact that the theater is a business. They don't want to think about the financial aspects. They don't think they should have to think about financial things. They just want to do artistic things, right. And that's good up to a point. But on the other hand, you can't have somebody who goes out and spends money like it's going out of style on a set or something when the organization can't afford it. There do have to be some controls, and I think a lot of people understand that. And again, if you're working together and people are supporting each other, and everybody understands that it's a supportive organization, then it's possible to work those things out without getting into a lot of arguments. But if people take a polar position and just say, well, I'm an artist and I'm not going to think about the financial, and I'm just going to argue about it, and I should have all the money I want, take a very...
Which happens.
Yeah, it sure does.
I can see how realistically,
oh, yes.
This is not acting here,
yeah.
This is reenacting.
Yeah. But you just have to try to understand more viewpoints than just your own. And if everybody does that, then everything works well together, and you all end up happy.
Yeah.
If people just refuse to do that, that's when you start having problems. And sometimes you can bring them around, sometimes you can't.
Right. I love that you shared that, because I've spoken with a lot of arts administrators, and as an artistic director myself, walk that line. And that is the thing that I've found most common is from people that are in an administrative or a board of directors standpoint. They say,
one of the biggest dividers between an artistic staff and an administrative staff is the artists unwilling to see the amount of work that goes in on an administrative side, or to value the financials as much as you value the music. And there has to be a better understanding of the two sides.
Yeah, you're all working toward the same goal, which is to have a successful organization that's producing this product and for everybody's enjoyment.
Right.
But it doesn't happen unless the organization survives financially. You know.
Yeah. Right.
I know when I first got involved with the theater here, it was basically bankrupt. And I thought we were just going to have to liquidate it.
Right.
And it took years to get that organization back on its feet because it had had years of really poor management.
Yeah.
Nothing else changed other than the management. But it's now a successful organization with an endowment fund and everything else. But that's how badly managed it had been.
That again, I just want to reiterate, nothing else had changed but the management.
Yeah.
The quality is still there, but...
And when you've got the resources, you can do a higher quality production. You know, you have resources to put into things that make a difference in the quality of the product, which make the artistic people happy.
Right.
And you know, a lot of them do understand the importance of it, but they just don't want to focus on it, and really, they shouldn't have to focus on it too much. That's why you have people doing these other jobs.
Sure.
They just need to understand and support the same thing they expect in return.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dawn, I loved your face that you just made right then. Not that it wasn't something inspired by what Stan said, but you just saw something on a program that like lit your face up. And I would love to know the story that you thought of when you saw that program.
I happened to open this up and I fell on Randall Thompson's Frostiana, and which took me to just looking at that and seeing just recognizing it, but also how music is ingrained. You know, you get an earworm, and I remember having pieces from Frostiana rotating through my head nonstop as we were on a hike down in Sedona. So that was just this little thing that triggered it. And since then, I've probably sung that twice. Yeah. So it wasn't anything terribly profound. But it is interesting to know, I think, how music just gets embedded in your brain cells and sometimes in other parts of your body too. It's a very physical thing, very neurological. Anyway, that just brought that to mind.
No, I love that though, but I think that's a great instance in that the music that we sing, sometimes it has these profound experiences for us, and other times it's something as seemingly minute of singing through the Randall Thompson and Frostiana pieces when you're hiking, and that it's just a part of us. Right.
It is, and it'll recur. And it's interesting too how sometimes I'll have a piece in my head rotating through that I probably haven't sung for years, and I think, where did that come from? What triggered that? Well, it's all packed in there somewhere.
Right. I love that. I love that. Is there another piece that has been influential in your life, or even just a small fun memory about a piece as well?
I still get, talking about weird mental things, there's a program here in this pile where we sang selections from Porgy and Bess. That was probably back in 1980. And I still remember that, and I still get little portions of that running through my head.
Right.
Gosh, I don't know. We hike a lot. I sing sometimes while we're hiking, maybe much to Stan's chagrin.
It keeps the bears away in Yellowstone.
Oh. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, that was when we were. That was in Glacier. There were so many bears around, and we were advised to make a lot of noise, clang bells, talk, sing, whatever. So at that point, I was taking voice lessons with Sally. And so I'd just go through my vocal exercises as we were hiking along. And I don't know what other hikers thought. There weren't that many on the trail at the time, but yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
I love that. Too bad you didn't know Carmina Burana by heart. That would have been
Oh
a
my
good one.
goodness. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a fun one. I've done that. I've had the opportunity now to do that twice. And I remember missing it once, joining a choir, and they had just done it the semester before. And I was just hoping that it would eventually come around. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Do you have a favorite masterwork?
I think Beethoven's Ninth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would love to do that again in a heartbeat.
Right.
Yeah. And I've had the opportunity to do that twice now, too.
Yeah. Y'all just did it a couple years ago.
Yeah, just a couple. Was it just last
It
spring?
was here before.
Okay, and then we did it in 2008.
Yeah, I think it was 18.
Yeah. So 10 years later.
We have the recording from that 2008 performance. It's really a good performance. I loved it. That was the performance where Jeffrey Swan played the piano in the Choral Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I about fell off my chair when I saw him play the piano. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Do you have a favorite masterwork, Stan?
That we've sung, you mean?
Either.
Oh. Yeah, I have quite a few favorites. I love the Beethoven piano concertos. They're not sung, but
Right.
but I love them.
Well, you try to sing to them, but
And I like Chopin a lot. A lot of piano music because
Right.
I played the piano.
Yeah. Which I've never heard you play the piano.
No,
so
I don't play very well now.
I think, though, when we get done with this recording...
both are rusty. But
We're both awfully rusty now.
But I still have,
play.
just like, the music will arise in my brain. I'll wake up in the morning with some song, the muscle memory, Schumann's, I think it's Schumann's Arabesque.
Yeah,
I
you
could
play
probably
that.
sit down and still play that.
I love that. I love that. I'm so bad at remembering stuff from memory on the piano. Well, as we kind of close out here in our official recording, I'm curious, what are the top 1 to 2 or 3 things that you appreciate about choir? Because I think it's, as a choir director and singer, I'm always so moved when I hear people's why.
I think I get to apply my voice to party music. How's that? That's a terribly simplified thing, but there's so much great music out there, and it's such a privilege, I guess, to have the opportunity to learn it and sing it and perform it. I think on another slightly different level, it's just the challenge of picking up a piece of music and learning it. So just the mental challenge. And there's a lot of coordination there from what you see and what comes out your mouth.
Yeah, I think it's really good mental exercise. I like the teamwork aspects of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Doing this with a group of people and all trying to work together and support each other, and with a leader who helps that process too. Because, if I compared it to playing the piano, you sit down at the piano and you play, and you might have a piano teacher, you might go for lessons, but a lot of it's just individual work, which can be very satisfying too. But it's kind of neat when you're doing this with a group of people. That's more like acting in a production where you're with a group of actors and you're all contributing to the scene.
Right.
So I think it's a lot more fun that way.
Sort of a gestalt.
Yeah.
Well, and the unique thing about choir versus even acting is that you're essentially doing the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No one goes on or off stage.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very synchronized. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a world where we often do not live in synchronization with others, it's an opportunity for us to come together.
That's true.
I think that's probably why when we show up for rehearsal, there's a tremendous amount of chatter and people just seeing one another again. It's a happy place. So I think we all expect to work hard. By the end of 2.5 hours, we are tired. But it's a good kind of tired. And just seeing one another and making it all come together.
Yeah, and then when you get to the performance and you're actually doing it pretty well, and because you've practiced it a lot, and you hear that sound and you realize, what you're finally creating and how beautiful it is. It's just so satisfying, to think that you were able to do that.
And there's also, for me, and probably for you too, that phenomenon of flow, where it's just you and the music and the chorus, and everything else kind of stops existing. And that's happened several times. In performance, even in rehearsals, but mostly in performance. You are just one with the orchestra, the conductor, the chorus, and nothing else exists.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And there's nothing else quite like it.
I love that. You mentioned the community aspect, and I just have to say, when I think of my time here in Flagstaff, I think of the great learning that I had, but I think of the power of community chorus and how special that is, and how special Master Chorale was for me to be across the country from my family. And at a very stressful time in my life of starting and finishing a master's degree, and what a safe haven you all and the choir as a whole were to me. And the fact that in a community choir, you get to meet people of different backgrounds and experiences. I mean, and ages, right? And
yes.
And gain these friendships that expose you to lives outside of your own. And I'm so grateful for the friendship that we've established, and my life has truly been changed through choir, through relationships like the one we have.
Wonderful.
So thank you both
You're
for
welcome.
being a part of this episode, for being a part of my life, and for ultimately being a part of choral music.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you loved listening to the episode with Dawn and Stan as much as I enjoyed recording it with them. Again, for more information to check out Dawn's awesome painting, make sure you check out the link below. And if you or someone you know is interested in the singer course, maybe you are listening to this because you love choir and love listening to the stories of choir conductors and composers and all the people, and in this case, the singers, be sure you go and check out the Choir Baton course list below. And if you are a choir director and you know of a former student or a current student or someone in your adult choir or church choir that is really hoping to learn more about what it takes to be a choir singer, what choral music is all about, understanding notation more, please send them the link to the course as well. This is exactly for them. Thank you so much for listening to the Choir Baton podcast. Please make sure, if you have not, that you like us. If you're listening to us on iTunes, by giving us 5 stars, leave a review. Tell other people about the podcast. Check us out on the website. Make sure you've signed up for the letter. Follow us on Instagram. There's so many ways to get involved in what Choir Baton is doing. As always, we are all about more people singing.